was a weird smile that you did when I got ready to clap.
Yeah.
It seemed very manufactured and fake even.
Yeah.
You agree?
Yeah.
Why? Why do that? As soon as I started to clap, Clay went.
You ever been on a cruise before?
Not in many years. I've skipped a cruise more recently than I have attended one.
They want you to take pictures all of the time on the cruise ship. So whether you're hanging out at the layout chairs or at the restaurant, whatever it is, they're always wanting to take pictures. So I realized that if you just go like that or whatever, they'll quit taking your pictures. So yeah.
So it's become a reflex for you.
Yeah, it's just a reflex.
The last time I went on a cruise, we went on a cruise for our honeymoon in 2015.
Oh my!
And which will probably be the last cruise I ever go on. I went for her.
Yeah.
That's not what I wanted to do. One of the funniest things that I experienced on that journey was there was a guy on one of the beaches. I don't remember where all we went on the cruise. We stopped several places, but there was a guy on one of the beaches who would walk around and he would ask if we wanted to take a picture. And if you said yes, he would hand you the camera and take a picture with your wife. And I thought that was hysterical.
That's a good move.
Yeah, it was probably my favorite of all of the moments on the cruise, just because I had never even considered something like that before, and it was a really good gimmick. And
gutsy move there.
Yeah.
Probably not as gutsy as Brody Hudson diving in center field, but pretty gutsy.
Yeah. So that brings up the next point. What's been happening lately? I'll start.
I've been on a cruise. Everything has been great.
FCCS has defeated the Mangum Dragons for the first time in school history. And everybody has been just acting like it's wrong of us to celebrate that moment because they're so petty and so sad that they couldn't win a ball game that they're trying to downplay FCCS and join. They're like, oh, they're acting like it's the World Series. It is the first time in school history we beat Mangum in a ball game that was an excellent down-to-the-wire ball game with a lot of intensity. And
I think the issue is that you lost to the same team 3 days before that.
For that reason.
so it's like...
Congratulations.
Door open.
Congratulations, FCCS. Your defeat of the Mangum Dragons.
So...
That's going to take me a while to clean up. But it was worth every moment.
Here's what's funny about that. But Mangum beat FCCS also. So
yeah,
we get to
but you've done that. You've done that. You're supposed to. You're supposed to beat FCCS.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
There's 100 kids in our school.
No, it's like having a great wife. Just because you've had a great wife for a long time doesn't mean you don't celebrate her, and you only celebrate her when you get a weaker, less great wife.
Are you implying that later in your life you'll have a weaker, less great wife?
You must think that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
This goes straight back to what I'm saying. They cannot let FCCS have their moment.
Should celebrate.
Yeah.
Yeah. One team got beat by 3 runs, FCCS. One team got beat by 1 run. Mangum, I think we both have reason to celebrate. Woo!
Yeah. Yeah, that's a loser's mentality. And I want you to know 2 things. One, I want it to be there. It deserves to be there. One, I'm about to go shut that door. It violently opened just as I began to celebrate.
I thought the whole world was coming to the end just because the door
slung open and then a gunshot.
And I don't know if y'all know about this wonderful location that we have, but it's right next to the slough in Winsboro. And so, things happen sometimes across the slough in Winsboro. So, the door violently opens, the wind goes crazy, and then all of a sudden there's a loud deal. And that's going to kind of lead us into our get to know you segment question in a minute.
The get to know you segment question is an excellent question.
Yeah.
No, hey, we really did get to play. It was an excellent ball game.
Yeah, very one of the best I've seen this year.
Yeah, it was a down to the wire moment. And really, like it was a huge moment for our school. We've never beat Mangum. I don't believe we've ever beat FP either. And this was the first year. It's my first year coaching, so I can't speak for the past years. But I think that we went into this season. Maybe they did last year before too. I'm not sure, but I know that we went into this season thinking that this is the year that we ought to be able to win a game against both of those teams. We had a good enough team to do that. And it all comes down to execution. Can you execute? Which has been something that has been a major struggle for us.
So did y'all beat FP?
We've only played them once, and we did not beat them in the first game. So we were supposed to play them again Saturday, and the game got postponed because of rain. But Case and King had a phenomenal game that day. It was excellent. You can't. It's hard to win on a day where a guy has a night like that. Yeah. I mean, he hit 3 of the hardest balls I've ever seen hit. It was very impressive, and we failed to execute, and that was I think the thing that made it such a big moment for us is we have been coming so close to winning so many games in the last few weeks, and we just could not execute and get ourselves over the top. And then finally, we have a game where it's not just against a team we've never beat that we really want to beat, but we finally executed in a moment where it was crucial. And that's been a pretty big stain on the FCCS banner over the last 2-3 weeks. And so to get over that hump and then to have to overcome failed execution in the 7th inning that almost cost us the game again. And but we finished one out, and so it was a really big moment. And then the guy that closed the game transferred from Mangum to FCCS, which made the moment a whole lot more tense than it would have been normally, just because there's a lot on the line for that young man. You know what I mean? Because for the rest of us, it's just a baseball game. For him, this is a moment where, did I make the right choice? You know, this is a should I have stayed? And I don't know that it's really that deep, but as a young 15, 16-year-old
he
man,
only played 2 outs in the whole game, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he came in at a time where the game time, maybe even winning run was on base, and came in to close the game out.
And gave up 1 and not 2.
Yeah.
And then both teams lost the next night.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
in the 8th inning.
Yeah.
So both teams lost.
It is what it is. Yeah.
And so, but no, man, it's been good though. My 3-year-old decided to swallow an acorn last night, which we thought was a toy car at first, and then possibly a crouton. It ended up being an acorn. That's a story for another day. But so it was an eventful day yesterday. You know, I got a call mid-game while I'm coaching from my wife, who would never call me while I'm coaching. And so as soon as my phone started ringing, I was like, oh no, this is not good. This is not going to be good news. This isn't hey, we're out of milk. This is a problem. And so as soon as I answered, it's just, hey, on the way to the ER, Isla swallowed something, isn't breathing well. And I'm 2.5 hours away. Yeah. It's every time my children end up in the hospital, I'm very far away. It has happened. The last time we had a serious incident with Aria, I was in North Carolina, and we've had a couple where I was home, but we've had a couple where I wasn't, and it's brutal when you can't do anything. But other than that, things are going. Things are going swimmingly.
But 2 things I want to say. Last thing about the ball game, and then because it is a baseball podcast, but you remember the bunt that y'all laid down the third base line, and Reggie tried really hard to let it go foul.
Yeah, he had.
And then
he was believing with everything.
He was believing it was going to go foul. So last night in the game against St. Fred's, Lane Almond lays one down, and in the same exact way. Well, William Patrick, the LSU commit, is on third base last night, and so Lane lays it down, and William just watches it, knowing he can't do anything about it, and hoping that it goes foul, and so we gave him such a hard time about that, asking him if he was just going to watch that ball or what he was going to do. We gave him grief, And Scott Almond is in there with me, and he's laughing. He goes, "You know that same exact thing happened to us last night." It's like, yeah, that's why it's so funny, you know. And because it's baseball, it's like we said, had such a big game 2 nights ago, and then both lost the next game, you know, in the 8th inning, and couldn't get it done. And that's just baseball. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a bunch of kids, and kids are going to be kids. But I thought that was funny that same exact play happened at the same exact spot on the same exact field, and we gave it to them, you know. And the other thing I want to talk about is my cruise. We had such a great time. My family always does great. Our vacations are wonderful. What was so cool is that we had talked about vacations and experiences and stuff before. Well, my kids didn't get to listen to Jesus Cartel before we left because we left on Thursday. It didn't come out till Friday. And so they didn't know what we had talked about. But the entire cruise, they talked about other experiences that we've had as a family.
That's cool.
You know, and that's really all they talked about. Was, do you remember when this? Do you remember when that? Do you remember these things? And most of them I remember, but they remember them all. And I thought that was really cool because we had just talked about that. And, you know, is it worth it? Because it is a lot of money. It is a lot of time. It is inconvenient. You know, they aren't really vacations, but they are experiences, you know. And in my family's perspective, it seems like they very much think it was worth it, you know, and because that's all they talked about was other experiences that we've had.
Man, how cool.
And so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But one story I do want to tell real quick as we opened up today, and I told this in somebody's job readiness class this morning that wasn't able to be there, but so I also told them something else. But anyhow, I'll stick with this. And so the very first day I was reading a book that Hayes Womack had asked me to read. So I was being a friend and reading the book, and my family went to go to, it was like what's it called, like a quiz deal to where they ask you questions and you answer questions, whatever that's called. But it was on country music and stuff. And so they had this little competition to see who knew you know, these country music songs or whatever. And all 3 of my kids were a part of it, and they thought that they got robbed. They thought that this other team claimed that they had more points than you could possibly have, you know. But yeah, they had a good time playing in it, you know, and everything. And then so Cooper asked me to go back and play one with him that was on college basketball.
Oh, nice.
And so we go to the lobby area, and everybody's kind of spread out. And you have your little paper or whatever, and you play, you know, this game based on your knowledge of college basketball. And we did really good. Cooper and I ended up with the same number. I think we both had 7 or whatever, and the guy that won had 9. And so he did real good out of 20. They were hard, you know, and so some difficult questions. And so, yeah, we have a good time. But Elena and Cooper got to know the people, the contestants, the people that were over the show and that kind of stuff. So they asked us to stay for the next one. So we was like, sure. Well, we didn't know what it was. So here was the next competition. You got a partner. You got back-to-back. Then they would say 2 options of something. And then you would say 1, 2, 3, and you would say your answer. And if you got the same answer, you got a point, right? So if they ask Apple or Samsung, 1, 2, 3, Apple. And you would both say the same thing. So Cooper and I, Elena teams with an old man that she doesn't know because her mom is too scared to, you know, get in front of people, so she won't do it. And so she, you know, stands with somebody that's like my Uncle Johnny or whatever. And so they failed. But Cooper and I, all of a sudden, the first thing goes through our mind is, how can we manipulate this competition to our advantage? Yeah. Some people would call it cheating. We would call it winning. Right?
I literally have already thought of a way to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
As soon as you said it, I was like, I would win. I know exactly what I would do.
So the first thing that we come up with is, because you back to back, first thing we come up with is, if I touch you on the right, then that's the first answer. If I touch you on the left, that's the left. So that's the first thing we come up with. And but they were watching a little harder than that, you know. So the first one we just answered correctly. It was Apple, and so that one was right, and that was easy. But then after that, I said, hey, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to guess whatever it is that you would do. You know, whatever it is that you would do. So that's our mindset. First, that's not cheating, you know. So if they say M&M's or Skittles,
I would have cheated.
I know mine's M&M's and I know his is Skittles, right? And so I wanted him to know that we were going with his answer, what he would say. And then we come up with another way is if you didn't know the answer, you just pick the first one, you know. And the last people at the end, they did that. They chose the last answer every time. And then the answers got to where instead of just 2, it was 3 and stuff. And one of them was Batman, Spider-Man, or Superman, you know, and our answer was Spider-Man. And so here's what was cool about it. Number one, Cooper and I dominated the competition. We were 6 for 6. We won hands down. There was another group in the back that had cheated the first time on the country music deal that they were upset because they didn't get a chance to go for number 6. But the rules were the first one to 6 wins, right? So we were 6-0, you know, or 6 out of 6. And so number one, Cooper and I dominated the competition. The second thing is, why did we dominate the competition? We came up with several ways to cheat, but we didn't have to use them. Why? Because I know my son and he knows his father. And because we know each other so well, we knew what I would say and we knew what he would say. So all we had to decide was, what would he say? Because he's not always going to say the same thing I am. We're 2 totally different men.
Yeah.
Right? We're not going to say the same thing. He's 17, I'm 48. But once we decided that, hey, we're going to say what you would say, then I know what he was going to say. He would know what I was going to say. And to me as a dad, it was just one of them aha moments to where it was like we know each other so good that we dominated this competition. Now, the other side of it is they ended up giving us a medal. And I made the lady put the medal on me. I thought that was, you know, a deal. And then I asked her if I could give a speech. And so I did. And then Cooper gave one too. He wanted to give a speech too. And his speech was something like, I came on this boat as a 17-year-old boy, and I'm leaving this boat a man. So I was so proud of him. And it was so great. And so while I'm telling this story this morning in second phase class because somebody didn't show up, Cooper texted the family group at the exact same time and said, y'all remember when ... and it was a picture of our medal that we had won. And I showed it to somebody's second phase group this morning and showed them that, you know, that's how in sync we are. And so I told you all that for a lot of reasons. Number one, I love to win. And number two, because doing it with my son was excellent. But then looking at the fact that the reason why we won was because of how well we know each other. And then thinking about the fact that that's the same relationship that God wants with you. He wants it so much that he knows what you're thinking and you know what he's thinking, and that you're able to answer those questions based on what God would do and God's choices. And so I just think that whole parallel there was pretty cool. For some people, hey, it's just fishing. But for us, it was a big deal.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then props to Cooper for getting off of a cruise ship, driving halfway across the world, and then going straight to a baseball game while he can't stand up straight because he's got sea legs.
Did you catch that extra base that he stole? I asked him about that in the JV game. I was like, dude, did they tell you to keep running? He's like, I couldn't stop. I just had to keep going.
I saw him before the game because I knew y'all hadn't gotten off the boat until that day. I said, how are you feeling, man? He was like, nah.
Nah. That was the fastest he's ever run in a game and the worst at bat after that he's ever had in a baseball game.
Yeah,
coming off the boat, you know, fun times.
Man, the boats are,
I feel it right now.
It's wild.
Yeah.
It's
Today's
wild.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
I still feel it.
It's wild. So, quick get to know you segment question. First off, we have talked about some similar things to this, but I don't think we've ever approached it from this angle. And so I want to ask you this question. What's something that happened to you as a child that forever scarred the way that you approach something?
Yeah, losing the FCCS the other night was the worst moment of my whatever. All right, so you said as a child. I'll come up
FEA,
with something
brother.
else.
FEA.
What does FEA mean?
Focus, earn, achieve, obviously.
Huh, okay.
Sometimes we hit them with a BTA, believe, trust, accomplish.
Okay.
Just some things that we firmly believe in over there at FCCS. Okay. If you hear us say those two things, it's just know that we are very structurally sound.
I like it. Well, right now I'm more concentrated on that PCH, but it is right now. It is what it is. So it's all about the PC.
He didn't even say it in the correct order. So I just wanted you to know it's definitely PHC, but
it's definitely the PHC.
I will have a PCH shirt made.
PHC for life.
Yeah, if y'all made throws like that in y'all's game, y'all would have won.
So when I was young, and I don't know if I told the story in Jesus Cartel, so I'll tell a short version of it. When I was young, I was 3, 4, 5 years old, that tall, whatever, and I woke up in the middle of the night, couldn't find my parents, and so I don't know if I was sleepwalking or what it was, but I left out of our house, walked across, maybe a 7 or 8 acre field, like a cotton field there, walked across or through the cotton field, walked to my grandma's house, grandma's trailer, went in there and took my clothes off and got in her bed and went to sleep. Locked the door behind me. They were on a mail route. They'd got up early in the morning and went, on a mail route. And so my parents woke up sometime and realized I wasn't there. I think it was before they went to sleep or whatever. And they realized that I wasn't there. And next thing you know, they call everybody, call everybody in. All the police are there and stuff. And then, it seemed like the issue there is that if you left my house and took the road, there was a pond halfway in between my house and my mama's trailer. So they thought that maybe I drowned in the pond. But I just went straight through the field there. And so anyhow, it was a lot of trauma for them. Maybe not so much trauma for me then. But looking back at it now, I've never liked being out at night since then. I've never, liked being just wandering around in the dark and that kind of stuff. I'm not, not a nightlight person, but at the same time, just not trying to be in the dark all the time either. So sure. I feel like that's probably got something to do with it. So, that was probably one of my most traumatic experiences, and I feel like it probably shaped me as an adult in some ways.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so. For me, I've been pretty vocal about my dislike of cats. So much so that people have been purchasing toy cats and leaving them around the center for me lately.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's happened on multiple occasions now. It's a very unusual choice of how to spend your money. But
I'm not going to say I'm jealous of this at all, but I'm just thinking about it right now. There have been viewers of this show that have purchased things for you just because you said that you would like to have that.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's been viewers of the show that have purchased things for you that because you said you didn't want that.
Mm-hmm.
But has anybody purchased anything for me at all? Good, bad, or ugly?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Okay, keep going.
I'm very clearly poor. People see
you
the
think
way
I was directed
people
that
see the way I dress, and they're like, he needs help. As a matter of fact, my current ensemble,
here we go.
$7. This was given to me. These shoes were purchased for me. They're actually flip-flops. And these shorts were $7. And so, people buy me things because of pity, I believe. And I want you to know, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I need all of the pity when it comes to acquiring things because I'm not going to acquire them myself.
Okay.
So I've been very vocal about my dislike of cats, and it does stem back to one particular moment. Now, I will say, I am very allergic to cats. I always have been. But that did not make me dislike cats. That just was unfortunate. I get very sick when I'm around them. The reason that I hate cats so much when I was 7 years old, I stayed the night at one of my friend's house, and he had, cats, dogs, whole shebang, a lot of animals around his house. And he had this black cat named Salem. And Salem was, pretty chill cat. He was an outside cat, but pretty chill. It was, most outside cats, my understanding, are kind of, wildish. But this one was cool. And one day I decided that I wanted to hold Salem. And so I'm sitting there and I'm holding Salem, and we're having just a jam up moment. Me and this cat is just hanging out, and I'm really like eating this up. It's the first time I can ever remember holding a cat before. That's why I really had to work up the courage to hold one, because I knew they had claws, and I didn't know how nice or dangerous cats were. And so I'd worked up the courage to finally hold a cat. And here I am. It's a fully grown. It's not a kitten. It's fully grown. It's a pretty big cat, actually. I say that. I was 7. It may not have been that big, but it seemed big at the time. So I'm holding this cat, and about that time, my buddy is instructed to go feed the dogs. And so he goes to feed the dogs. Well, when he goes to feed the dogs, he has to let them out of their pen. They had this huge pen in the backyard that all the dogs kind of hung out in. Well, when he goes to feed the dogs, he has to open the gate. Well, the dogs run out. And when they make that corner, this cat did everything it could to get away from these dogs, and everything it could involved clawing me to pieces. And so I got absolutely destroyed by a cat when I was 7 years old. And since that day, I don't believe I've held a cat since. I think I've only touched a kitten one time since then. I'm very anti-cat, and have been since that day. It's a very traumatic experience, one of which I've not forgiven the entire cat species, which some people say is prejudice or stereotype, and maybe so. But in this particular scenario, I'm going to call it fair. And so, that's where I am, man. That scarred me as a child.
Yeah, I'm not a cat person either.
Yeah, it'd be weird if you were half cat.
Yeah, I'm not a cat person, not a dog person, not really into any of that kind of stuff. Yep.
So last week we did our episode on thinking positively,
Yes.
and just really zoned in there. I enjoyed talking about that more than I thought I was going to. Which I always know I'll enjoy the conversation, but I really enjoyed that conversation. Got a lot of good feedback about it. The people who hated the episode before that kind of got back on board, so that was good, man. But you got a little different topic for us this week, man. Tell us what you got.
Yeah, so the topic this week, remember, we're talking about things that you can do to be successful or to reach your goals. And so this week's topic is to change your perspective. Change your perspective. And the little blurb here says, sometimes along the journey, you have to change your perspective to turn a challenging situation into a better one. Oh man, I like this, and to me, a lot of it can go along with the positive talking that we had last week. Some people can see things in a negative way, some people can turn it and see it in a positive way. But whatever it is, while you're accomplishing your goals, while you're going through life, while you're trying to succeed, you have to be able to change your perspective. You can't just continue to see things the same as that way and expect to get different results. You can't continue to see things the same way and expect to get the same results. It's just not going to happen. Things change. And as things change, you have to change. If not, they'll change without you. And we talked about that a few weeks ago. And so we have to be able to change our perspective while we're trying to meet our goals and while we're trying to do those things.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of times there's a saying that self can't see self. And while I don't wholeheartedly agree with that, because I believe that you can do honest self-assessment, I do think that there can be a lot of truth to that if you're not good at being honest with yourself. And I would say that more people are bad at that than are good at it. I would say probably 70 to 80% of the population has a really hard time being honest with themselves, because we live in a culture today where failure it's not accepted. Like, we could never say I failed, because the minute that you say, hey man, I tried something, I failed, somebody's going to come up to me, put their hand on my shoulder, and say, brother, you didn't fail. You just found 15 ways not to succeed, or something stupid like that. And it's like, I understand what you're saying. I do. Like, yeah, like it is narrowing my path towards finding success. I'm a trial and error guy. I'm very much on board with that. But we still have to acknowledge that we did fail. We can't just call it not like we can't just say, oh, I just haven't succeeded yet. It's like, dude, you failed. It's okay though. Like, we have to be able to embrace and accept failure and then move forward past it. But if we just pretend that we didn't fail constantly, like, it puts you in this weird, like, purgatory of a place that doesn't really exist, where you're not successful, but you're also not failing, and you don't need to do better as long as you don't do worse. It's like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? And so, we have a young man, this young man who I was coaching one time, and, he had a goal, and he was given the opportunity to reach that goal, and he didn't reach the goal. He had the opportunity, but he didn't reach it. That's okay. That happens sometimes. And so I told him, afterwards I said, really, you got two options. I said, first option is we can cry about it. And I said, now that sounds like I'm picking on you. I'm not. This is a realistic option that you have that most people in your situation would choose. They would just cry about it. It's like, yeah, it didn't work out. Woe is me. And they'll think of all the reasons that it was unfair, or I didn't really get a shot, or there's so many things that go into those mindsets. I said, or we could acknowledge it. We could take ownership of the fact that we had an opportunity we didn't produce. And now we can start to work to make sure that this never happens again. We can start course correcting to basically bulletproof ourselves for the future. I said, I wish I could choose for you. I can't. You ultimately get to decide which of those you're going to choose. I hope you choose option 2. And if you do, just know that I'm in the trenches with you, and I will work as hard with you as you want to work to make sure that this never happens again. But the first thing that it requires is a change of perspective, because right now you've got success in this moment as your goal, and we didn't reach it. We didn't reach it. So if that continues to be our goal, we're going to continue feeling like a failure, because our goal's still not met.
That's right.
Now, you may not get another opportunity. So if that's still your goal and you lack opportunity, you can't change anything. Right. So what you have to shift now is our perspective. So what is our new perspective goal? Our new perspective goal is to bulletproof ourselves for the next opportunity, whether that's this year, next year, or 3 years from now. I don't know when it will be, but we just need to be ready when that moment comes. And that starts by refocusing, get rid of the old goal. So that we're taking ownership of that. We failed to produce in that moment, but now that's done. Now we're setting a new goal, and we're going to accomplish that goal. And we're going to work towards accomplishing that goal. And so we've taken ownership, and now we've let it go. We've moved on, and we've got a new goal now, and we are on the path of accomplishing that. But you had to first shift that initial perspective.
Yes.
If you can't shift that initial perspective, you remain a prisoner to that situation. And that's, like you said, it's insanity, because you continue doing the same things over and over, and then nothing happens, and you're like, well, I don't know what to do. And you end up unhappy, you end up getting lazy because you feel like the work you're doing is not producing, and it just turns into a whole mess. Why? Because you had a poor perspective. You got to make a perspective shift.
Yeah, so I like that. If you try something and you fail at it, own the failure.
Yep.
And then let's jump back in, change it up, shift our perspective, shift the knowledge, and then let's move forward in it.
Yep.
Let's and like you said, set a new goal, and we know we're going to accomplish that goal. Now, something this said give yourself the opportunity to take time, think about your situation, only using positive language, and see how much your day or week changes. Now, this is a technique that we have to use a lot in marriage counseling and stuff. A lot, hey, if things are going difficult in your marriage, quit speaking that negative, in it, start speaking the positive in it, and watch things change. Well, it's the same way when you're trying to accomplish goals and stuff. Like you said, own your failures, but don't focus on your failures. Focusing on your weakness will never make you strong. Hey, we had to own it, but like you said, just as important is now, hey, let's tweak it, let's change it, let's do what we need to do to change perspective so that we can move forward and still accomplish something. And so I think it's important in goals that we're not so rigid, that we are able to change some things, make some audibles, make some adjustments there.
Yep.
But something else I want to talk about is, we've talked about leadership on here and different things, and that's a topic that a lot of people really like us talking about is leadership. What about if you're the leader or you have a leader that doesn't ever change their perspective? They do the same things over and over again. Some of it was successful at some point, but it's not being successful now. But it's just like they're oblivious to the fact that this isn't working.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, hey, let's try something different, they want everybody just to conform to their idea because it worked in the past. Have you ever experienced that before?
Yeah, it's extremely common, and ultimately those are not strong leaders. Those are people who stylistically found something that worked at that moment in time. Usually, we kind of see those successes like fall into people's laps, and a lot of people had that accusation of Coach O when he came to LSU. He had a lot of old recruits that he didn't bring in and won a national championship, and then things just kind of tanked after that. And there wasn't a whole lot of change happening. You're still playing like you have the team that you had, and you don't. Yeah. And so being able to adjust to situations is what separates leaders from talented people. And there's a big difference between a leader and a talented person. A talented person is extremely useful if you put them in the right situation, the right circumstance. A talented leader is somebody who can adjust to the circumstance and give you the best chance to succeed regardless of whether or not those factors change. And I've worked for a lot of bosses over the years that kind of had their one way of doing things, and those businesses all failed, and they found all their talented people relocate because they wanted to be under real leadership, people that would actually set them up to succeed. And then, you have it in coaching constantly, and it's the challenge as a coach because you don't get a whole lot of grace from your fans, especially like high school kids, the parents and stuff like that. It's like, you have one bad game, it's like, okay. You have two, now you're in a situation. Yeah. And it's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to change? And it's difficult because there's so many factors involved, but you got to find a way. You got to find a way, and you can't win ball games with last year's teams. No. You can't win ball games with yesterday's home runs. No. It's all about constantly adapting, and that's something that I personally pride myself on being able to do is be adaptable and be honest about the situation that I'm in, and be honest about my shortcomings, and that's difficult for a lot of people. Especially when they look at me in particular, because I don't talk a lot about my shortcomings. It's not because there aren't areas I'm not as strong in. I won't say I'm weak just because I won't say it. It's a perspective thing. You know what I mean? My perspective on myself is strong. I believe in myself a lot, and I'm extremely confident. Matter of fact, it's like kind of a running joke among our team and players, because it's like I just about will not admit to making mistakes ever, not just now, but ever. And they'll laugh. And just at yesterday's game, somebody said something. They were like, "Has that ever happened to you? Is some weird thing happened in the ball game ever happened to you?" And one of the other players piped up, was like, "That would never happen to Andrew. He would never make a mistake like that." And I was like, "He's right. I wouldn't." And a lot of people hate me for it. For the record, a lot of people can't stand that level of confidence, but I have lived in self-doubt, and it was terrible. Yeah. Like I was not functioning well in self-doubt. So if I just function on the other side with extreme self-confidence, I found that to be the most effective version of me. The middle, I will say there is a middle, but I kind of feel like I am in the middle, but I just lean more towards the self-confidence side. I'm not gonna overdo it. I used to. I kind of went way too far and then had to back off of there. But that self-confidence, a lot of times it leads people to think that you think you don't have any shortcomings or anything that you do struggle with, and that's not true. There's absolutely things that I struggle with as an adult, as a leader, as a ball player. Even there were things that I wasn't as good at, and that's a reality. But I don't harp on those things.
Right. That's right.
You can't live in that place, and so.
But you also can't act like that they're not there.
Correct.
And it's everybody else's fault.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, the best advice I could give a person, especially if they're young, is kind of teeter-totter with that balance a little bit,
Yeah.
and figure out where you function best. Because some of the most talented young people I know don't believe in themselves at all, and it comes out in their performance.
Yeah.
And then some of the, I don't want to say least talented, but some very mediocre people when it comes to skills. Really believe in themselves and have some pretty decent success.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're skill-wise, you are literally the mark for average, but you can't tell by the way you perform.
Yep.
We call those people gamers.
Yep.
It's just something about them. They believe in themselves. When they get in the moment, they do excellent. And you got them on both ends. And you can see a young man, you've probably seen it in your life, where somebody's just killing it at work, they're killing it at the house, but then something happens. And you can just see that something causes them to lose belief in themselves, and then everything just starts sliding downhill, and it just gradually happens more and more and more. We see it all the time. And so, the perspective you have, not just on your situation, but your perspective on yourself, your self-perspective,
Yeah.
those things are major.
It's a big change there, as far as, talking about the person that's, just stuck doing the same things and everything. We see that, in coaching, a lot and everything. You talked about, Coach O inherited this team, and while the team was great, he looked great. But when the team wasn't great, he didn't look great, whereas Les Miles, built a great team, but he didn't adapt. And because he didn't adapt, next thing you know, he's not even in coaching anymore. And, I cringe, because I love sports. I cringe when they talk about a coach coming into a situation and they can, he's this kind of guy. He's that kind of guy. He runs this offense or that offense. And I really don't like that. I like the guy that, has adapted everywhere he went.
Yeah.
He might not won as many games when he had less talented people, but he played to their strengths.
Yeah.
I love playing to strengths. I remember even when I was in high school playing basketball, and we were playing against Woodlawn, and they had one really good player. So instead of running man-to-man or 2-3 or whatever, we ran a box one. To where, we run a zone and then put our best athlete on that one guy.
Chase this guy around.
That's right. No other game
Yeah.
did we do that. But we did that in that game. So if our coach would have been, no, we're a 2-3 zone guy, we would have lost the ball game. But because we're able to adapt, and so we love it when, he's maybe what we call a player's coach, to where he is going to, change his perspective, change his mindset, change how they perform based on the talent that he's given. I said this to a youth director one time. I had a youth director that I was friends with that had the mentality of, well, the church kids are going to go ahead and come to youth anyhow, so it's my job to go get the lost kids, go get the kids who are a little different than other people, and bring them in. And so next thing you know, all we got is a youth full of struggling, weird kids, and all of the church kids aren't coming anymore. You know? And I'm like, no, let's be faithful with what God has given us. In this perspective, this instance, we had the most popular kids, cheerleaders at Franklin Parish, and the most popular cheerleaders and people in Mangum. Hey, let's use this, and let's do that. Now, if you want to reach these other kids, you go reach them. But let the kids, let them bring this in. And so he did that. Next thing you know, the biggest youth that he ever had was able to get more done, accomplish things, and able to help everybody. Yep. But you got to know what you got. Yep. You got to know what are we playing with? Number one, you got to know what year it is, because you got to be able to adapt. Everybody's got to be able to adapt. Oh, you got to know what year it is. You got to know what you're playing with. Hey, what are we trying to do? And you got to be honest with yourself. That's just something that you said a while ago, and I just want to harp it again real quick. Don't act like things are working when they're not working.
Yep.
Don't act like that we didn't lose when we lost. Don't act like we didn't succeed when we're losing. Hey, look, I'm the positive guy. I love looking at things in a positive way. But don't be so blinded that we can't admit that we need a change.
That's right.
I think so many people, they get so oppressed and thinking that this is just the way it is, and they don't realize that we need a change of perspective. We need to change that. Something that was said at a ball game the other night by a coach was, he said, don't get upset about losing this game. You lost 12 games already.
Oh.
Now, in my mindset, that's a loser's mentality.
Yeah.
We need to be upset when we don't do good. Now, we don't need to hold it. We need to flush it at some point. But we do need to go through those things that, hey, I had a goal. I didn't succeed. That doesn't feel good. Mm-hmm. So now let's do something different this time so that we don't feel that again.
Yeah.
That's a mindset that we all need to have.
You just quoted the speech from our huddle after yesterday's game.
Mm.
It's exactly what Cody said to our players.
Yeah.
He said, remember this feeling.
Yeah.
So that you don't ever have to feel it again.
Yeah.
Grief made me great. Just be honest with you. Grief made me great. The things in my life that grieved me the most, the things that I had the hardest time with, are the reasons that I'm excellent in so many different areas. Because I once struggled and was terrible in an area, and it nearly destroyed me. And I remembered how it felt, and I said, I'll never do this again.
Yeah.
Grief made me great. The things that happened with my family when I was young are the reasons that those things don't happen in my family today.
Not going to.
Yeah, grief.
No matter what.
Grief made me great.
Yeah.
Grief made me a great husband. Grief made me a great father.
Yeah.
The struggles that we experienced earlier in our marriage between Courtney and I, the grief from my childhood and what happened and how it affected me was the reason that I didn't just immediately cut the cord on that situation. It was like, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. And I didn't know if there was hope or how hope was coming or if hope was coming. But I just knew I couldn't cut the cord. Mm-hmm. And thank God I didn't, because now things are better than you could ever imagine they be for anybody, not just for us, for anybody. I would put my marriage up against anyone's marriage now. But it was because that grief made me have a little bit of perseverance in an area. And if I didn't have that perseverance, I'd have walked away. And my wife would have been hurt for it. My children would have been hurt for it. I would have been hurt for it. Yeah. And so, man.
So me knowing that situation a little bit, what about if you would have just dug your heels in and said, there's not a problem here?
Golly, man.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, not only am I'm not the problem,
yeah,
but there isn't a problem at all.
Yeah, man, that's terrible, because ultimately everything gets worse. There's a myth in life, and we've talked about this a few times on the show. There's a myth in life that there's such thing as neutral territory, and there's not. Things progress or things regress. That's the only two things that can happen. It's like, for those of you who are Christian, here's what I want you to do. I want you to stop praying, and I want you to stop reading your Bible. I want you to stop attending churches, small groups, all of those things for the next 6 months. Don't do any of them. And tell me if you remain neutral. Tell me if you are still just as strong 6 months from now as you are right now. I guarantee you, with no hesitation and actually some experience in that area, you will regress.
I dare to say, just cut out one of those three things.
Probably so.
And see if you don't regress.
And so, as a matter of fact, let's be bold. Some of you are regressing.
That's it.
You know, some of you are regressing right now, and that's why there's something that you used to regularly include in your walk with God that you've taken out. Some of you are regressing. You need to get back to the things that will work. How many times do we see that in the center?
All the time.
People come through and they catch a little bit of fire in first phase. They move into second phase with some momentum, and then by the time they get into the third phase, about to graduate, they look like a shell of who they were 3 months ago when they were in second phase. It's like, what happened? They regressed. They let go of something that was a priority to them at one point. And here's the deal: we can act like we didn't fail, or we can take ownership of it and say, hey, you know what? I left this behind.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to do something about it, you know? And that's what it takes to be effective. And so, but yeah, man, I see people dig their heels in all the time and say, there's not an issue. Well, that just starts a regression. That's what starts a regression, because you can't progress when you're ignoring an issue. How can you progress? There's no issue. If your house floods and mold starts crawling up your wall and you say, that's not mold. That'll go away in a few days.
Right.
Well, you can't progress, because to progress would mean you'd have to cut out the mold that's there. That's progress.
Yeah.
Examine the problem, recognize the problem, do something about the problem.
Yeah.
That's progression. If you don't do that, what happens is it continues climbing the walls, and then it'll go over the ceiling. And by the time you are honest and say, okay, hey, we got a problem. Well, now you have a much bigger problem than you had, and it's. I don't want to say it's too late to do anything about it, but it's going to take an army to fix what would have been very easily fixable in the beginning.
Well, yeah, it regressed at the very beginning because you allowed a flood to happen anyhow.
Sure.
But the moment that you decided, hey, this isn't really a flood,
Yeah.
then, hey, now it's going to multiply.
Yeah.
You know, now it's going to multiply. So as a leader, as somebody just trying to be successful, be open to changing your perspective of things. If you're a negative person, change it to a positive deal. If you're a person that never sees that you've ever done anything wrong, start analyzing those things. You know, you said earlier, and I don't want to get into it too much, but you said earlier about, you know, people aren't that good at self-analyzing themselves. A lot of times we hear of blind spots.
Yeah.
You and I are, I would say, better than average at self-assessment. We do it all the time.
Sure.
And so try to limit your blind spots as much as possible. But man, when you got people that you trust that are coming to you in these things and showing these blind spots and stuff, man, you have to listen. You have to at least evaluate it and see it. But if you're not willing to change your perspective and just keep doing the same old things, not only, like Andrew said, not only will you not get the same results that you got before, you're going to get worse results than you got before.
That's right.
You know, it's not going to stay the same. So, man, that's really what I got on changing your perspective. You got anything else you want to add?
Yeah, no, man, I honestly feel good about it. I feel like we hit that in a compact way, and you know, I don't want to beat that horse to death. You know, I hope that this was helpful for some people. I hope that some people step up to the plate. We talk about self-analyzing all the time because it matters.
Yeah.
We talk about being honest with yourself all the time because it matters.
It does.
These are the things that ultimately dictate whether or not you stay on whatever path you're on or you become more excellent. And, you know, my goal is to be more excellent in every area, every opportunity that I have. But to do that, I have to take ownership of the fact that I'm not as excellent as I could be. I was talking to one of my players. We were doing a Bible study the other day, and we talked about something we talked about in our job readiness class, which is your best effort versus discomfort. And they're not the same. You know, being uncomfortable doesn't mean you tried your best. It means you were a little uncomfortable.
Right.
But there's a difference between, I tried hard enough, it made me uncomfortable, and I did the best I could do. And I was telling, you know, some of our players who were at the Bible study, I said, you know, am I giving my best effort at coaching you? I would honestly say no.
Right.
I'm giving a really strong effort. And I wouldn't take that from me. I'm putting out a strong effort. But is it my best effort? I don't think
You
so.
still got a job, you
Yeah.
got kids, you got a wife.
Sure.
Those things.
Sure.
Are you giving the best effort you should give? Probably
so. Yeah.
But the other would be out of balance.
Right. And but you have to be able to be honest with yourself about those things to be able to acknowledge whether or not change needs to be made. But if my response to them was, hey guys, I'm doing the best I can, well, that wouldn't be true. And they know that that's not true because I'm not up there all the time. You know, I could be up there more than I am. It'd be harmful to my marriage and my relationship with my children, but it could be. But the way that I present that to them creates dishonesty and distrust between the two of us. When I tell them, hey guys, I'm doing everything I can do for you. And they're like, heck you are.
Right.
You know what I mean?
half of practice, you
You're a
just kind of
part-time coach.
stand there and watch. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's like, it clouds the communication when you can't be honest.
Yeah.
It clouds the communication. Communication is probably 99% of the solutions to any problem that you encounter is the way that things got communicated. And so, yeah, got to be aware
I got
of those.
one last parting shot. If the next time that you hear come out of your mouth, well, this is just the way I am and I'm not changing, slap yourself. As hard as you possibly can.
I
You
like
know,
it.
Hey,
Good advice.
it's good advice. You know, the mindset of this is just the way I am and I'm not changing, or this is just the way I do things and I'm not going. Slap yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
like
really foolish.
That's a good one.
Change your perspective to be able to be successful in life.
That's as good a way to close out an episode as I could think of.
See y'all.
Yeah, we good.